Well, good evening, everybody, and it's great to see plenty of people building up in our auditorium this evening. Welcome to everybody. I'm just going to see who's in the house. Let me just have a look. Just flicking a few buttons as we go along. Who have we got? Jill got front seat tonight, so Jill's put looking. It's just disappeared as I just said that. Jill's put looking forward to this evening. It'll be like going on holiday without the hassle of travelling. It's a good one. Message from Viv. Sorry she can't make it tonight, but wishes you all the best. That's great. Graham H. Good evening, Graham. That's okay. Who else is there? Good evening, Jim. Jim's next on the list. He got into the auditorium fairly early this evening. Who else have we got? Vera. Good evening, Vera. Hope you enjoyed your day out or morning out on Monday. It was great meeting up with you in person. I think we all had a good morning and managed to get some great images. Who else is there? Diva's in the house. So good evening, Diva. Diva says, I think I've got the size incorrect now. Oh, that's all right. That was a message to Jill. Caroline Steele, good evening. So hopefully both Dave and yourself are there. I can see that in the message. So welcome to you both this evening. Peter's popped in. Good evening, Peter. And Bob's popped in. I don't know whether Bob's got a touch of the brown stuff tonight in a glass or whether he's just got brown stuff in a cup. But no doubt he'll have brought something with him. So, and that's about it at the moment. So good evening to everybody. And as you all know, we're going to be entertained this evening by Caroline. And she will be sharing her images with us, and we shall be she'll be showing us from here to there and back again. So I'll just make that full size. There we go, so that it all shows. I think that's going to work nicely for Caroline. So, yeah, been a nice day, not too bad, a little bit warmer for us all. Hope one or two of you have managed to get out to get a few images. If anybody else is listening this evening who hasn't signed on yet and just let it know that they're with us, just drop a comment in the chat so that I can see that you're watching. Michael Hughes has just popped up. Good evening, Michael. Hope you're well and keeping active. So we're slowly building up to the numbers. We've got a few minutes yet to go. We've 4 minutes yet. So it's by the way, it's not myself who's making the bit of noise in the background there. It's just coming through from Caroline's end, so nothing wrong with your computers or anything. It's just a little bit of noise coming through from young Caroline. What was I just going to say? Something. Can't remember what I was going to say, so we'll move on swiftly. Yeah, as I say, we've got a few minutes yet, and we're up to 16. Oh, I know what I was saying. Anybody that is watching this evening who hasn't just dropped us a note in the chat, please do so that I know that you're with us. Good evening, Ray. Ray's just popped in. The other thing that I would say is don't forget, if you would please, just to make sure you click the like button at some point, and if you haven't subscribed, make sure that you subscribe in the appropriate place. So it all helps with people, etc., and numbers that we get on the door. So I am going to just start the notices a minute or two early. because I've got 5 little notices for you. Another Michael's just popped in, Michael Hudston. Good evening, Michael. Hope you're very well. I'll come back to the chat in a minute, but Doreen's just popped in as well, so but I'll come back to the chat in a minute. So notices, the first one is many apologies about the triptych competition. We only had 6 takers for it, and 6 takers wouldn't have been enough for a full evening. But please do watch your emails, for the simple reason we're going to incorporate it into another evening at the, if I remember rightly off the top of my head, at the beginning of August time. I'm not too sure. I'm just frantically looking at my pieces of paper. But 27th of August. We're thinking that one, but I'll send you a notice anyway. The triptych competition has been, as per the email, it's been replaced by a new comp, which is much simpler for many more people, which is a black and white open competition. We've gone for the black and white just to make sure that we can try and get everybody remembering that the blacks need to be black and the whites need to be whites, and you have to have all the tones in between. So don't forget those. Jill will be sending a little bit more information out over the weekend about that competition and the closing dates. So don't stop looking at your emails. Keep checking them. Jill's also going to send out a new score sheet for the transport competition, the one that's currently just finished. The entries have just finished for it. Now, unfortunately, we've had to drop that down to 2 entries per person, simply because the judge, he didn't think he could cope with the numbers that Dunholm have given him. We were about to send him about 100 images, and he did cough and splutter a little bit, so we've reduced that by the normal competition rules by taking off your last entry. Now, Jill's had to do a little bit of judging on what she had to do, and some people didn't send in competition forms, and so she's just had to take your last image off, which means that it may not have been the one that you wanted taking off. So please remember to put in that competition form, because if we have to reduce it, Jill will take your last entry off and remove that file. So do make sure you put your entry forms in. Next Tuesday at, just thinking of the time, our time, 12 o'clock, Albany, Dunholm, Albany in Australia, our twin club, will be giving us a talk about Albany Harbour and all of the images that go with it. So anybody that's able to, do make sure that you can be with us at 12 o'clock next Tuesday. You can start logging on as usual from sort of 11:50. So it is going to be a little bit different because they want to use Zoom, and I shall be doing our normal way like we are now through YouTube. So go to YouTube and you will see the icon as usual. Just to let you know, I will be doing an interview on Radio Lincoln 12:35 on Monday. They got in touch with me and asked if I'd do a short interview about how we've been coping and what we've been doing during the lockdown period and how we managed to cope. I think we've coped very well. I think people would agree that we've all had an enjoyable time on these Thursday evenings, checking and looking at everybody's images and all of the different things that we've had for you. So I'm just going to catch up with the chat again just to see if anybody else has popped in. Yes, Tony has just popped in. Good evening, Tony. Good evening, Richard. Who else? That's about it. So we've got up to 20 anyway, so it's our normal number. So what I'm going to do now, without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Caroline. Just as a matter of interest, Caroline, before you start, if you move your cursor off the screen, just to the side of the screen, it'll there's a few things that's showing, so that's great. So without further ado, over to Caroline, and I'll pass on all of her applauds from yourselves to Caroline. Over to you, Caroline.
Thanks, Graham. Evening, everybody. Thank you very much for allowing me to do this. I really haven't thought about giving a talk because I didn't think I had anything really that interesting. But it got me thinking about all the places that I've been since I got my first passport many moons ago at 18. And actually, Cameron and I have been to quite a few places. So whilst we aren't able to travel around the world right now, I thought I would take you via my pictures and hope it inspires you to visit some of the places if you haven't already been. Some of the pictures are going back quite a few years when I used to shoot in film, and I've converted those into JPEGs, so they've actually come out quite well. They're not all competition standard, but then I take pictures for me. So I'm going to start my talk with one of my first destinations, if you can guess the name. Well, most of you know that Austria is my favourite place. I'm partial to the cold weather. I love the snow, so combined with that and the fact that one Christmas my hubby and I were going to be home alone, all the kids had grown up, they didn't want us, we were surplus to requirements. So we decided to break from the normal manic shopping, consuming a week's worth of food in 3 days, most of which we wouldn't normally bother with anyway, followed by the Boxing Day sales and getting swept away in the need to buy unnecessary items. Obviously not camera equipment, but you know the thing. And we went away for Christmas. Now, most people would prefer winter sun, but I like to go in search of snow. I wanted a traditional winter. So I look back to 1987 when my friend Christine and we took a 2-week holiday to a small village called Fuschel in the Salzkammergut region of Austria. It was a fantastic holiday, and probably one of the only ones where I came home lighter than I went, because you don't get Glühwein in the summer, and we did a lot of walking. So I decided to focus on this area, and we picked a place called St. Wolfgang, got on a flight, picked up a car and arrived, and it was pouring. So that didn't go down too well. So the next morning I thought, well, it's got to be better than this. And what's better than waking up on Christmas morning to find the scenery of the mountains. We have the same room every year. The owners now book us in. I can't imagine Christmas anywhere else. It's an absolutely fantastic view. We're not right on the lake, but we're far enough, and you can sit on the balcony, have a coffee and a Baileys or two, and just basically enjoy the scenery. Sometimes we don't get snow on the lower levels. We do get it up on the mountains quite a bit. So even if it's not great weather down by the lake, you can go up into the mountains and it changes completely. So this is the lake that we overlook. And just another view of the lake. Nothing special about the picture, but it was an absolutely bitterly cold day. And as you can see, there's no snow on the hills. But it was a cold day, and that picture just, to me. So down by the lake itself, you've got Christmas decorations everywhere. They hang baubles in the trees. They've got Christmas trees dotted around all over the place, planted in logs. They don't put decorations on them because when you have snow, you don't need decorations. But they're simple and they're effective, and they are really, really atmospheric. And on Christmas Eve, they celebrate their Christmas Day. So on Christmas Day, our Christmas Day, everything is open. So usually you can get a blue vine, you can drink anywhere, cafes are open, even shops are open.
Just a very quick one there for you, Caroline. Graham H. has just said it didn't take you too long to mention alcohol.
Well, Graham H. will be pleased to know tonight I'm on the water. So this building here, this is called the Door Farm, and this is where we have our Christmas dinner every year. The building on the left, the big building, is part of the hotel, and it's a doll museum as well. And in each of those windows, they have the Advent numbers countdown. So every day, like we open a window, they light up a window. So by Christmas Eve, all the windows are lit, and it looks beautiful. So yeah, we have this nice log cabin where we go in for our traditional Wiener Schnitzel, which is the nearest you're going to get to turkey dinner. But it's lovely food, lovely atmosphere, absolute steal. You're paying €50 for a meal there. It's really quite reasonable. That's for €50 for 2 people, and that includes a couple of drinks. So never want to go short on my holidays of a few drinks. And then this is the Door Farm lit up in the evening. So you can see we had a good dumping of snow this holiday. And it's just amazing. It's just, I can't explain how Christmassy it feels. The log cabin is really cozy. The only disadvantage is it does get busy, and a lot of tourists do go there. But as I say, we go every year, and we usually book a table, and they book us for the whole week, so they know we're coming. So it's never a bad thing. That's my niece in the car park being pelted by snowballs. So on a sunny day, no snow on the lower hills, but you can see up in the top there's quite a lot of snow. The Schafberg Railway runs from St. Wolfgang, and it goes up the mountainside. It runs until Christmas Eve, so we haven't actually been up there in it. But when you get snow up there, it's really quite deep. So, we've yet to try that one. The boathouse, this is taken from across the lake to our town, St. Wolfgang. Reflections, the water's amazing over there. The colours are spectacular, really beautiful. Crystal clear days, very cold. It reaches temperatures of about -11 when it gets really cold, which is it's fantastic, really great for me anyway. So this is across the lake again, like I said, the mountain behind our hotel. You'll see the church in the middle, that's St. Wolfgang Church. It is a very small town, few pensions, guest houses, many close for winter, some don't close. You've got the White Horse, which is on the lake, spectacular hotel, but you're paying €1,800 for a week at Christmas. We pay €500 for 2 people for a week. So I'd rather sit at the top of the hill where ours is and walk down into the town for that. But it is such a pretty, quaint little town. And I think they did say that in Europe, this is St. Wolfgang, St. Gilgen and Strobel are the most most Christmassy towns in Europe. So walking back from the Door Farm on an evening, you can see trees everywhere in the village, in the town. They're just dotted everywhere. They've got candles which you can see in the cases under the tree. They're usually lit. This was quite late on. They have log baskets burning. It's just a very open, cosy atmosphere. There's no worry of anyone doing a health and safety assessment on whether they're going to get burnt from the candle, because most people are sensible. And it just adds to the ambience there.
Just as another aside, Caroline.
Just to prove that I'm a child at heart.
Just to give you another comment there. Doreen's put, I was just going to say the water looks very inviting for a swim, but maybe not at that temperature.
Not at that temperature, definitely not. It does get really cold on the lake. I can guarantee that. So walking home one evening, all the rest of the group that we were with had all gone on ahead, and the car park was too tempting, and I decided to make a snow angel. You've got to, haven't you? It doesn't matter how old you are. Snow angels are still fun. Here we go. Now, because it's Advent, the Advent candle sits on the lake. Now, this is really, really tall. The candle itself must be about 10, 12 foot tall, so you can imagine the size of the casing. Now, 2017, they had a storm just before it was launched onto the lake, and it damaged the whole frame of it. So that year, they weren't able to pop it on the lake. Luckily, they got it fixed, and on an evening, it's all lit up, and you've got the little stars that you can see around it, and they light up around the lake, so they look like they're just floating on the water. It's really very pretty. Each town, St. Wolfgang, St. Gilgen, and Strobor, all have different Advents, which you'll come and see shortly. So now we've moved across from St. Wolfgang over to St. Gilgen. Now you can see the boat on the right, that comes in from our little town, or you can drive round, whichever. You come into St. Gilgen and they have candles everywhere. So you have this big candle, which is probably about 30 foot tall, and you get smaller versions in windows, window boxes, trees everywhere. So each town has their own specific decoration. And St. Gilgen does have the big candles, which do look spectacular on a night. They don't look as effective until it gets to dusk, and then you'll see how different it looks. The whole atmosphere changes. So walking through St. Gilgen, you can see there's little wooden huts like we have at the Lincoln Christmas market. You have Christmas trees again. They have them dotted all around everywhere. Decorations hanging from the trees. The huts either sell food, they sell drink, and when you buy your Glühwein, if you're partial to a Glühwein, if you buy one, you actually get a mug that goes with it, and every year there's a different mug. I have got the most amazing collection of mugs in my kitchen. So in St. Gilgen, as you can see on the right, there's a cable car running up the side. Now, I remember this cable car in 1987 when I first went with Christine, and it was rickety then. And when I saw it again, I thought, they're the same cable cars, they've not changed them. I kind of held my breath all the way up the mountain. But no, they still work, and they're still functioning, and they're fine. So you go up from St. Gilgen, and you go all the way up to the top of the mountain, which is the Zwolferhorn mountain. From here, you can ski down. As you can see on the left, there's a few skiers. You can walk down if you're really that way inclined. You can just walk around up at the top. There's plenty of places to walk. We usually take hiking sticks, so they help us get up and down the mountain. We've walked to the top several times, which is it's spectacular. You get a fantastic view. Here, you're still not quite at the top, but as you can see over the mountains. And now, if you go to the left, you can go to Fuschl, which is another little town, and also you can see another lake just in the distance. You can probably just see it beyond the cable car. That lake is Mondsee, which was the lake where they filmed The Sound of Music. So I've not done any Sound of Music. We have had a sing-song with it, but no climbing mountains, I'm afraid, doing that. So from the very top, I did take the big camera with me, and not bad handheld. I put it on full zoom so I could zoom in on St. Wolf, our little town. And you see the church, and then to the right, as you're going up the hill, there's a clump of trees, and that's pretty much where we stay. So we have a little walk into the town. It's nice, but we get the benefit of we're not being dead centre in town, and it really is a pretty quaint little Austrian town. So back down from the mountain, we usually go up there, come back down about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, by which time it's getting quite dusky. And by the time you get down, it's freezing. This was when we realised it does get to about -10, -11. You've got people walking around still. You've got the shops open, the huts open. You can see in the windows the candles are still all lit. They have them in balconies, all the windows. It's just such I just love Christmas when I go here. It's just me. And another part of St Gilgen, you can see the fire basket, which often many people are stood around eating breakfast, drinking their glühwein. Soup and bread rolls are usually good as well. They are pretty good with food over there. It's got a better feel to it. And again, as I said, when it starts lighting up on an evening, it looks much better. You get the full sphere of the trees, the lights, and the snow just tops it off. The roads are quite lethal. They're snow covered, ice covered, but you're prepared for it over there, and we have no qualms about driving around. The roads are fine. Doesn't matter if you have a foot of snow or an inch of snow, they're still out there ready to clear. So going on from St Gilgen, we go up the mountain to a place called the Post Arm, which is a ski resort, ski area. Now, we've been up here a few times, and the guest house where we stay, they've lent us their sledges because, like I said, we're like family to them now. So last year they lent us sledges, skis, so we can do whatever we want, and they just say bring them back at the end of the vacation. And so we go up to the mountain. You always get snow up here, no matter what you have down on the lower levels. So we come up here, we park up, and we grab our sledges, and we either walk or we go sledging. You can walk quite a few walks around the top of the mountain. You don't very often find much open up here. The ski area is open. We've been up there a few times just walking, and also had the wrath of the skiers because we've actually walked in their cross-country ski run. So that was quite funny last year, but they didn't think so. We did, but they weren't too impressed with us. So they do quite a lot of sports up there. They do, like I say, paragliding, skiing, walking, cross-country, pretty much everything. And it can be just the nice weather initially when you go. Sorry?
Excuse me just a second, Caroline. Just for the members, for some reason, we've got a weak streaming signal, so apologies if the signal just varies a little bit. It should come right again, but it's just telling me there's a weak stream, so it may go a little bit blank a time or two. Sorry, Caroline, carry on.
Oh, that's okay. No, that's okay. So up on the mountain, you can see, as you know, with any kind of weather on a mountain, it can be fantastically clear at 1 minute. Next minute, it can be snowed in. You can see the snow coming in. I personally would love to be up there in that hut, which you can see the snow comes up to the windows. I'd quite happily stay up there for the entire winter. That would suit me down to the ground. It's so lovely. For this picture, but that was me coming down the mountain on the sledge. Despite all my issues and such, like, I still had a good laugh driving down there on the sledge. And boy, did you have to go fast. It was harder coming up though. You had to bring it back up. I couldn't just say to Mark, "Can you just carry my sledge?" He wasn't having it, so yeah, I had to do that myself, I'm afraid. So when we come back down into St Gilgen, you can see, into Strobel, you can see it's getting dusky. It gets very cold. I don't know, it just keeps it slightly above temperature at the lake sides, but it's still very cold nonetheless. We usually live in either salopettes or waterproof, fleece-lined walking trousers. You don't want to wear jeans or anything casual. You want to be warm. There's nothing worse if you're up the mountain, cold and miserable. So this lake that we're on, this is Strobel, which is the other end of the lake of St Wolfgang, Wolfgangsee. Now St Wolfgang, St Gilgen, and Strobel. So this is the other end, and this is a very quiet little town. So moving on, this place was the place I first went to. It's Fuschl, and it's a good 15-minute drive from St Wolfgang, probably 10-15 minutes. Now, Fuschl was the first place we stayed. We were on a budget. We had no money as we were 18, 19, and we lived on bread rolls for breakfast, and then we treated ourselves to an evening. So it's probably no surprise that we lost weight that year. But I was quite keen to go back because, like I say, it was 1987. So to go back again in 2017 was quite lovely to see how much it had grown and how it had changed. It's really, really quite a nice little village. And that's another view of the lake. The lake fascinated me. Christine and I, when we first went, we took a rowboat out onto the lake, and me being the taller of the two, and I'm not that tall, but I seemed to get the job of rowing the boat around the lake. So she said to me, "Oh, there's a beach over there. Let's head for that beach." So I rowed to this beach, and we were almost there, and she shrieked at me. She said, "Oh my gosh," she said, "it's a nudist beach. Keep rowing, keep rowing." So I had to row further. So we had quite good fun on that holiday. And this picture next, this one, is a film picture. That's one I took in 1987 of the lake. I think we'd come back from an evening meal, and I saw the sunset coming, and I didn't have my camera with me. Madness. So I rushed into the guest house, grabbed the camera, ran down to the lake, and just managed to catch a sunset. And by luck, this chap was rowing across the lake, and it looked better as a film picture, but it's come up quite well. You can see it's quite grainy, but it's a lovely memory from those days. Really lovely memory. So the next lake we visit is about 5 minutes away from us. This is called Schwarzensee. It's a very small lake. You can walk around it in probably an hour, hour and a half. The first time we went, it was covered in snow. Second time, there was a little bit of snow, and on this occasion, there was no snow. But we were skimming stones across the lake, or my brother-in-law was skimming stones, and the sun just broke through the cloud, and I grabbed him. I said, "Don't throw that stone. I've just seen the most amazing picture." And I just wanted this perfect glass-like picture, and that's what it turned out like, which I was quite pleased, because a second later that sun had just disappeared, and it had gone completely. So I'm always on the lookout for a picture. This is also Schwarzensee, just zoomed in on the rock formation really, and the colours that come down from the mountain. It's still green and brown even in December, but with the lake being so still, the reflections were lovely. They just fascinate me, the textures and everything. I just love the lakes. So that's Schwarzensee, and that was the year we had a lot of snow. So as you can see, there is no lake. It was frozen solid, and it was covered in snow. So every year that you go, you get a different view of what that area is like. It looks completely different, and it's a nice long walk. Harder in the snow, but it's a nice walk nonetheless. So moving on to the next town, this is Hallstatt. Now, you may have heard of Hallstatt. It's quite a popular place. It's very touristy. Now, you get quite a few coach loads of people coming in. We visited once or twice purely because it's a nice little town. They cut the road into the mountain, so the road goes through the rock, comes out the other end, and you park up, and you can drive into the town, but only for locals, so most of it's on foot. It's got a pretty church, which I don't know if you can see it in this one. It will show in the next one. But it's just a nice little town, very touristy though, so which is quite a shame, because I think that's taken away a little bit of it. So in Hallstatt, you've got the funicular railway. This is no good for anyone with heights. as you go up here at a rate of knots, and it's really, really high. Not sure why I was leaning out looking at it, but it makes you quite giddy looking how fast it climbs up the mountainside. And as you can see, no snow down there on the lake, on the lakeside town. And there's the church. That's the view from the top of the funicular railway. Just zoomed in with the Panasonic, I think, with this one. Just purely to get the market square. And as you can see, the church and the orange building, just in the middle, there's a little square. And that usually houses the Christmas tree. This year they didn't have the tree up there, but it gets a few people in. There's always people buzzing around. And once you're up at the top on the funicular, we tend to go for a little bit of a walk. So you might not have any snow on the ground, but up at the top, you've got snow. And we just walk our way through the woods, really. The colours are lovely, not quite shown in this, but the trees are green. They're always crispy and snowy. And I don't think anyone lives up here, although it does look like there are car tyres. So there must be a way other than the funicular. Moving on, we go to Obertraun, which is just around the lake of Hallstatt. We came up here one morning quite early, and as you can see, the mist is still rising. No snow on the ground, but on the tops of the hills. It's a very quiet little place, very few people go. Touristy in the summer, nothing happening in the winter, so it really is a nice place. Just have a little walk round. As you've got the lake as well, you can walk around. And that's the part of the lake. So again, you've got crystal clear water. The reflections are fantastic. They come up amazing. And the water over there, trying to explain to someone how bluey green the water is at these lakes, it is quite something. So I like that. I just like to get the reflections. And again, another part of it. And across the way, you can just see on the left-hand side, that's Hallstatt. So you're on the opposite side of the lake. And you can see how clear the lake is, and not too deep at this side because it's crystal clear and you can see to the bottom. Definitely not worth a dip though, very cold. So going up from Obertraun, we go up to Dachstein, which is the glacier. This is where everybody goes up to ski. You take 3 cable cars up the mountain. You get to the very top and you can see you've got snow beyond snow. It's everywhere. You can see for miles. You can view from a platform called the Five Fingers, and it's literally like a hand, and it has 5 fingers pointing out. But on the occasion we went, there'd been so much snow they couldn't allow it to be open. So, and if you can get to stand on it, you can see right down. You're very literally hanging over the cliff. So spectacular views. Just another viewpoint. I just wanted the hut in it because I thought it added some colour to the blue. Very hard to paint. To photograph snow, it always seems to come out blue. It doesn't matter how much I expose it for, it always seems to have a blue tinge. But then you've got blue sky, so potentially that. And that's the other side. We walked all the way around, and again, you can see for miles, you've got mountains, you've got the Alps all around you, and people just ski down from here. It's a very busy ski resort. And there we go, down into the valley, down towards Hallstatt. Hallstatt is down and to the left, but like I say, you go up 3 cable cars, so you're not going to see it, but the views are spectacular, breathtakingly cold. I think it was about -5, -6 up there, so it wasn't too bad, but yeah, it was definitely breathtaking. And the air is so fresh, it's so crisp. So, what do you do when you're on holiday in Austria? On Christmas Day, you go for a sleigh ride, because this is what we booked for everybody. The second year we went, as a surprise, these 2 horses pulled up, and we all jumped on board, and it took us through the villages. Then it took us out into the hill. through the woods, and we stopped halfway for a glass of schnapps to keep you warm. Medicinal purposes only, Graham. And we had about an hour on the sleigh. And you can see how cold this was. Crossing the lake. The lake was frozen this year. It was so cold. Two lots of horses, and you could see the icy atmosphere. It was bitterly cold. And there we are. It's a bit of a smaller picture, but they were lovely, lovely horses. And it's a sleigh ride on Christmas Day. What else can you do? That's the view I took from the sleigh. So it's not pin sharp, but we were moving along a bit. But I just like the way that the mist came in, because there was a hoar frost and it was bitterly cold. I think that was about -11 that day. But it just came out as a lovely picture. It felt cold. And again, you can see how much snow they've had. Last year they didn't have anything like this. There was a lot of snow on the roofs. This was just 2 huts on a lake, and we were actually being pulled over the lake. So it shows you how cold it gets. If they can actually go across the lakes, they're quite confident to go across the lakes and the waterways. So moving on to my favourite lake, I think, is Goshaussee. Just a bit up from the sleigh ride. You take a drive up the mountains. And this is another lake which I photographed 3 or 4 times, and every time it looks completely different. This time we had a little bit of snow and a bit of mist, so the water looked greeny grey. I just like the feel of that. And as you can see, that was taken probably 2 years ago. That was frozen solid, and we were all throwing snowballs onto the lake, and they were echoing around. You could hear the echo around the lake. It was quite surreal, but a completely different looking lake with the mountain and the reflections in the background. And then that was taken last year, I believe. Again, a completely different view of the lake. You've got the wooden log at the side, and lots of snow. You could be anywhere. Each picture is completely different, which is what fascinates me about this. Now, Goshaussee, there is this lake, and if you walk for about an hour heading towards the mountain pass, you've got the smaller lake. That's only accessible by walking. And fingers crossed and hopeful this year that we might actually get there. So there you go. There's another place I'd like to live, in the mountains, in a hut, with trees. Simple life. It'd be amazing, wouldn't it? You'd be at the camera every day. I would. And we're just walking up through the woods again. You get bits where there's no snow, where the trees are quite clumpy and protect it. It's all very well going up, but going back down when you're walking, if you haven't got your snow grips on, most of it's spent on your backside, so you end up going down on your bottom. This is one of the lakes we haven't actually managed to walk around yet. This is called Altesay. This lake was where they filmed Spectre for James Bond, so Mark being a Bond fan, we had to go and see this lake. At the time, we got there quite late, so we didn't really want to attempt walking around it. But again, it's a nice, quiet little place. Not very many tourists, so another good place for a walk. And finally, last year, we went out to find a lake called Hintersee. And this lake, we parked up at the top and we walked down. It was so warm, we were walking around in no coats. We just had ski tops on. The lake is as green as it looks in the picture. There's no Photoshop, there's no editing on that. It's just how green the lake is. The water is spectacular. I did put this in for a competition, and the judge thought I'd over-doctored the water, but I hadn't. I can say, hand on heart, there's no Photoshop on that lake. That water is that colour, and it's a pretty little lake. Again, not very many tourists, so nice to be off the beaten track. So that brings to the end Austria. Now, I know I like my winter, but I'm not just a winter bird. I like warmer climates, and I have travelled to quite a few. So I'm going to take you a bit of a tour around them. The first one being, if you can guess, is Cuba. We went to Cuba for our 50th birthdays a couple of years ago, and we went for a fortnight, something I never normally do because I get bored. If there's nothing to photograph, I get bored sitting, but you've got to compromise. I like the snow, Mark likes the sun. So we went to Cuba, and it is an absolutely amazing place. Absolutely worth the 9-hour flight. White sandy beaches. Sea is so warm, fantastic, beautiful place. Now, we stayed in Varadero, which is at the top of the island, and quite close to the Florida Keys, which I wasn't aware of. So you can see both of the sides of the ocean when you drive down Varadero. It's literally a strip of land, so you can see both sides. Which, when I think they had a storm in 2015, they were hit by tropical storms, and you can understand because there's just no protection for it. So, but that was our beach and my sun umbrella. As you can see, nice sunsets. We had some lovely sunsets. We didn't have too many. We had a few. You used to get quite a few banks of cloud, and as we went in November, it was just a bit cloudy. We had some cloudy evenings, but we got some lovely sunsets, and we were forever writing on the sand Cuba 2018 and trying to get it before the sea took over. Now this was a really strong stormy day. I think we'd been in the sea in the morning and it was whipping up a bit of a storm, so the flags came up and we all got out. But you really didn't want to be in this because when it did get choppy, it was really, really quite aggressive. But stunning beach, lovely to be. And there we go, that's the other side of my sunset. I always like to try and get a sunset in at least some places that I go to. So if you go to Cuba, you've got to go to Havana. Havana is the capital. It's steeped in history. If you do get the chance to go, visit the old town, and go with an authentic Cuban tour company. Don't go with your TUIs or your tours. I've found that finding an authentic Cuban company, they were fantastic. You get to see more, you do more, and you've got a one-to-one tour guide. Now, in Cuba's quite a poor country. Quite shocking, really, that it was a bit of an eye-opener to see things. Quite a lot of damage to buildings, and for those of you that know me in Camera Club know I like a few derelict buildings and such like. So this was my ideal, being in the old town. And they're very proud of their heritage as well, and very proud of their history. Now, these three ladies obviously they get paid to have pictures taken, but I did craftily sneak one. But as you can see, the lady on the left glaring at me, not looking too happy. I'm sure they all get snapped quite a lot, but I just wanted to see them while they were stood around chatting. You do get a few of them around in costume, but she was fine. In Cuba, they have so many American cars, the 1950 cars. You've got to see, well, you will see, and they're great to travel in. They make most of their money from using these cars as taxis, and they have to be of a certain standard to be a taxi for tourists. Some of them quite a few of them have been restored. The engines are really hard to get now because they're American cars, and America and Cuba don't have good relations. They can't import anything from America. So they have to basically improvise and make what they can with whatever they've got handy. I have seen where one chap even used a boat motor in the car, which did a bit of damage to the chassis, but nonetheless he did get it up and running once he managed to find a proper engine. You don't have aircon in these cars, you don't have seat belts. forget all of that. They're very bouncy. I think when I drove to Havana in it, I think I clocked up 10,000 steps on my Fitbit just because of the suspension of the car. Nothing to do with me walking at all. But if you get a chance, if you see Cuban Chrome, which was a series based on several different people trying to update their cars, it shows you how hard it is for them to source bits, source parts for the vehicles, and what lengths they will go to, because to be in a prestige club in Cuba with these cars is quite important, and that's where they make their money from.
Just quickly stop you there, Caroline, for a sec. Graham H has put what standard? So it's referring to something you said just a few minutes ago when you said standard.
So the standard of the vehicles, they have to look good, both inside the engine, inside the car. They have to look the part, and they have to be fully functioning. They're not all brilliant, but I think they have a different standard. What we would think is, going to a showroom and picking up a brand new car is a superb standard. You forget that. You're looking at something that's clean and polished and looked after. You can't have something with rust on. You can't have it with a dent in it. It's got to look pretty good for tourists to use. Otherwise, if it's not up to a good standard, then the locals will use it, but they don't earn as much money from the locals as they do from the tourists.
All right, thank you.
So more streets in Havana. I love my derelict streets, graffiti on the walls. Nothing in particular, but I just like the feel of it. It gives you a feel of the old town. Again, quite rugged. Good detail on some of the buildings. Quite worn though. You do have a mix of new and old. That's a very special building. That's the Bacardi building. So everyone that goes to Cuba has to have rum. So that's the rum place. Bacardi, I think it's still used. I believe it's still used. And the Bacardi building sign. So obviously you've got the history of Cuba. They're very proud of their history and what happened back in the 50s. Che Guevara, Fidel Castro. They're quite recognised in many places around the city. In fact, around most of the towns that we visited. And this is quite a huge building, and they have them attached to the wall. They're very, very proud of it. And again, I was just walking past this place, and I saw through the gate, and I looked at it, and I like the pictures. I like the derelict feeling of it. And I was a bit put off by the good food, well prepared, and an arrow pointing upstairs, because I just don't think I'd even try it. Didn't look quite that good for me. But again, in Cuba, they don't throw anything away. They keep it because you never know when you're going to be able to use it. More buildings, more derelict windows. I love windows. Windows and doors fascinate me. No idea why, but I'll always be seen taking pictures of windows. And this chap was outside Ernest Hemingway bar, which is just a mojito bar. But on an evening, he was typing up the menu. No fancy gadgets, just a good old-fashioned typewriter. And he sat there daily doing that. As you can see on the wall, there's lots of names and signatures. When you go to Ernest Hemingway bar for your mojito, which are supposed to be the best in Cuba, you sign your name on the wall. We're on there. There we go, another taxi. You can see how well they're looked after and how well they've been put together. Polished and used as tourist travel. As you can see, lined up. They like to show them off. They have shows and people just pull up, line them up. And they're really proud of their machines because of what they've had to go through to get them built to that standard. Then they like to see them out and about, and you do see them everywhere, absolutely everywhere. There we go, another good lineup of them. That's it. We went out in the pink one on one occasion, but they're beautiful old cars. It's like stepping back in time, and they're so quick to show you everything, tell you everything about it. They're very warm, welcoming people. So by far the best trip we did when we went to Cuba, we went out on a Jeep safari. Only we didn't have a Jeep because they didn't have any Jeeps, and we had this 1959 Bel Air, which was pink. There was 4 of us in the car, so 3 of us sat in the back and 1 in the front, driver going. Great car, really comfy drive. You don't need aircon because you've got no roof. And they took us out to a plantation, and this is pretty much how they live over in Cuba. Oh, before I take you to the farm, we went snorkeling one day, and whilst Mark was out horse riding, I went off and did some pictures of some derelict buildings. But this chap used to wait with his horses. He'd have 3 or 4 horses there, and the horse ride on the beach was included in the trip that we paid for with our tour company, but he relied on tips. Now, he would take home $10, maybe $20 a month to live on. So if you tipped him, he relied heavily on tips because they just don't get paid very much money in Cuba. So what we tipped him was probably a $5. He thought we'd given him the earth. It's very humbling to see. And although I did try the horse riding, I felt a bit jittery about it, and I felt a bit bad for him because obviously I wasn't going to be on his horse, so he wasn't going to get a tip. But Mark and Karen, who went, they tipped heavily, so he wasn't out of pocket. So these are the derelict buildings I found on the beach. You can always find them anywhere. I think they just get used, left, and finished with. There was nothing in the safe. I did find a nice safe. I did have a look inside, but it was rotted hard. So I think Jill will appreciate derelict. I don't take credit for this picture either. This is me with my cocktail. The chap just pulled a coconut off the trees, cut a hole in it, filled it with rum and coconut milk, and it was absolutely delicious. And the cat wanted to share some, but it was as if to say, "Where's mine?" And it's just such a cute picture, being as I'm a crazy cat person. So Mark took that one. So we went onto the farm, which is a plantation, a coffee plantation, but it sort of did a bit of everything really. It had animals. It had porks. These are called porks. They're not called pigs. They call them porks. And they rear them from large to small, and then they're put in pens in which order they use them. So, but these were quite cute little things running around. And you've got banana trees. There's a lot of banana trees on the plantation. You can see the ripe banana, well, semi-ripe bananas above, and the little pod at the bottom where it's dropped out from around them, so that they live in a pod, and then they come out of this pod once they're nearly ready for ripening. And there's one of the pods with them in, but they were everywhere. And the bananas, I think they were only about 4 or 5 inches tall, 4 or 5 inches long, but they were lovely. So I've masked out on my friends' faces just in case they didn't want this online. We had our lunch at the farm, and it was a metal table, and the farmer's wife popped the tablecloth on, which was marginally cleaner than the table. There were 2 chairs that were pretty much safe. Mark sat on another one, which I think was a log, and I sat on a log based on 2 breeze blocks. So it was kind of a strange lunch, but we had included was lobster, chicken, potato chips, salad, and rice. And what we didn't eat, they had for their tea, which I found quite sad, really. I found that, they were happy to give us everything, and they had what was left. So, like I say, beautiful, welcoming people, really warm people. Very humbling experience there, visiting them. It was so nice. This chap was picking coffee beans. He does it by hand. I'm not sure how old he was. I think he was in his late 70s. That's what he's done all his life, pick coffee beans. A really lovely chap, very friendly, showing us how they grew, where you pick them, how you pick them. And then they dry out naturally, so there's no air dryers or anything. And as you can see from around the farm, there's odds and sods, bits and pieces, nothing really uniform, nothing, it's just a bit of everything. So these were drying out these coffee beans. And again, bit more of them. You don't buy property in Cuba, you get given a piece of land with property which gets passed down through the families. So the families have several buildings on this land, and like I say, they don't throw anything away. So you've got bits of everything lying around. It's very ramshackle, but it's just the way they live, and it's how they're used to it. I'm pretty sure that might have been an attractive table once upon a time, but the chickens kind of like it. And I reckon if it was cleaned up and polished, it would probably be quite a nice piece of material. But like I say, don't throw anything away. And the same with bits of engine. Keep it just in case, because to get car parts, it's really hard. So you keep it, and if somebody wants it, you've got something to sell, which is a good way. And this was where our farmer grew up. That was his house when he grew up, which is empty now, because once he's grown up, moved into his own little house, it just gets left. So you've got these houses dotted around everywhere. And I'm not quite sure who built that one. The balcony doesn't look that great, but it's part of their farm, and that was what they got used to. So farm life in Cuba. So that's pretty much Cuba. I don't know if you want to end it there for a break, Graham. Would that suit?
That would suit ideally. We're at 5 to 8 now, so that would sort us. If we can be back, folks, for 10 past, and then we'll look to start at 15 minutes past. So you've got 15 minutes for your various refilling of glasses, and we will see you then. So all the best, and we'll see you in a short while.